worked at a number of large companies prior to taking the plunge. I worked for GlaxoSmithKline, I worked for Drexel University, I worked for Traffic.com, and then I slowly started working for smaller and smaller companies. I would then work for Dracontis, and then finally took the plunge on my own to start my own company that I co-founded with a number of other folks called Use It. So going back, this is now in May of 2006, so it was a while ago. It started out with an idea. So I worked at Traffic.com, I worked side by side with Brent Mansell, who was a developer and a designer at Traffic.com, and we worked together building this traffic system, which if you've ever watched the television news with the red, green, yellow cars that go across the screen in an immersed 2D or 3D environment, that was the product that we had built. And Ajax was just becoming a big thing at the time, so the notion of using asynchronous JavaScript technology, similar to what Google Maps does. And Brent was asked to go to this conference, the Ajax conference, and there he was working with, or had met a bunch of the pioneers of Ajax, and he was trying to think about ideas that would be interesting to work on. And he had this idea of a web-based document viewer, which is pretty pervasive now if you look at Google Docs or Google Patent Viewer, Amazon's products, Jive software. I mean, this is pretty prevalent today. But it was a new idea at the time. And so he had brought this to me and said, I'm really thinking about starting this company. And him and I had worked together for about 2 years, and I really thought about joining him, and we were talking, and this was around the time that Y Combinator was just starting, and I had put interest in something called Startup School, which was the first Y Combinator event before Y Combinator actually existed. I was invited, I was chosen to go, and I was at this event, and I was with all sort of the, I was with Stephen Wolfram, the editor of Economics Magazine, or Business Week magazine, and Paul Graham, and surrounded by all these sort of business technology hacker folks, and was pretty wowed by it. And so I went back to Brent, and we were talking about starting this business, and I suggested to him that we should go into Y Combinator and whatnot. And he really wasn't interested in going to Boston. He was kind of like, who's Paul Graham? And which is kind of funny today because Paul Graham is like a pretty prolific character. So I just decided to go. That I wasn't going to work on this and do other things. So I was curious. I wanted to start a business, and I'd done some consulting on my own, and I basically had started meeting weekly with some of my friends. And we had an organized event, like every Tuesday night we would get together and we'd brainstorm ideas and think about what we wanted to do. And this was really helpful because we were focused on, actually quitting our talking about quitting our jobs and launching a business. And I decided to join a startup at the time rather than sort of take the plunge on my own. And so I left Traffic.com, I worked for another startup, and I was there for about a year, or 9 months. And in the meantime, Brent had actually been working on building this product. He hadn't really done any biz dev or anything, but he actually had a functioning web-based document viewer. And I still was trying to advise him, and we were trying to figure out ways that we could build a business and whatnot. But I was still working for this other company, and I was really passionate about this other company. And at the time, and I bumped into someone one day who had almost convinced me to join their company, and it sort of had totally caught me off guard because I never would have imagined leaving my job that I was at the time. So this person had sort of convinced me that I could leave and start a company with that person. So then I started thinking about, well, I've been working with Brent for several years, so why wouldn't I just leave and go start a company with him? It wasn't really much of a company at the time, but it was basically a bunch of code that did a neat little thing, but there was really no business. It was just a bunch of technology. So I decided I was going to try this out, and so there was a few things going for it at the time. So we worked at Traffic.com, or I did at one point, and our product was sort of at the forefront of this of the company, and there was I knew all the investors at Traffic.com, and I was relatively I was like seven or so years ago, 8 years ago, So I was relatively young, and I was like, oh, well, I know all these investors, they know my name, so naturally they would just give us money if we said that we were going to start a business. And one of two other people at Traffic.com had agreed to sort of loosely form this company too. And then one of the co-founders had family that said that they might put some money in. And so we started sort of circling around this concept. I had about $18,000 in the bank, approximately. I don't remember exactly how much. And I basically had agreed to join. And joining wasn't putting my job together; it was really just moonlighting. So the weekly meetings turned into basically every night. Now I was starting to work on this project. So we had a bunch of people that were doing various things. We had a biz dev person, we had a finance person, and we had 3 developers. And so we had a team, we had an idea, and we were all focused on eventually we were all going to quit our jobs and leave. And so after a while, I couldn't possibly moonlight anymore. It was basically driving me nuts because I was working on one startup during the day and then basically working on another startup at night, and it was just really disruptive to my life. And I actually felt somewhat dishonest or unethical to my current boss at the time. That I sort of felt like I was cheating on him, and in some ways it sort of was. So I told my family about this, and I started to tell my friends, I was going to start this company, and really, actually, none of my friends or family, I would say, was very supportive at all. I was going through some of the things that people had said to me, and one of them was, you can't quit your job. How are you going to pay your bills? You don't know anything about business. We didn't pay for college so you could stop working. I can't tell you how many people just said like really condescending things to me. Solve the real problem, your idea sucks. And in hindsight, I just think a lot of those folks just really didn't have confidence in themselves. And I think sort of the key thing for me ultimately was just, looking at all this irrational information and just deciding to take the plunge myself. And ultimately, I think that came down to just confidence. So I gave my notice, and I gave my boss actually 3.5 months of lead time, just because I was such a key person there. He was like terribly upset, and later he was supportive, but initially he was also one of those people like, you're an idiot, you're never going to survive, blah 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 blah. So it was an interesting time for sure. And I'll tell just a few more months beyond that point. None of the venture capitalists that I knew ever ended up investing. The biz dev guy and the finance guy ultimately bailed, and the other third co-founder at the time also had bailed. So there was basically just 3 of us left, all developers, having no clue how to do any business, and it was sort of the anti-lean startup. I mean, we basically just kept building and building and building, and never even talked to any prospective customers or anyone. It's like well before lean startup. However, 4 Steps to the Epiphany was out. I just didn't really know that it existed, and nobody was really talking about it at the time. The friends and family money actually did come through, although we burned through that like really fast. At one point I was over $20K in credit card debt, and I think I broke up with my girlfriend. That kind of sucked. I think there's a lot of despair to some extent, but I think after a while, your survival instincts start to kick in, and when you're totally broke and you have no money, and you will eventually figure it out. And I think eventually we found our way. We did raise money. We did. The business still operates. It's still profitable. I'm not really operating in the business anymore, and I've started another company since then. But